Wir sind sehr froh, dass wir heute einen Gast haben, der aus London kommt, der sich mit nichts anderem beschäftigt, als wie kann man tatsächlich also in solchen Situationen kühlen Kopf bewahren und die Spreu vom Weizen, das Echte vom Falschen, möglichst schnell und möglichst glaubwürdig herausfinden und auszusortieren. Alastair Reid ist Managing Director Director Editor bei First Draft. Das ist ein Netzwerk, ein Mediennetzwerk, das tatsächlich für alle klassischen Medienhäuser genau diesen Verifikationsprozess durchläuft. Und er wird uns heute mitteilen und hoffentlich auch ein paar Beispiele geben, wie man in so einer Situation tatsächlich reagiert und tatsächlich das Social Web irgendwie in den Griff bekommt. Alastair war vorher bei Journalism Co. UK, hat dort als Editor gearbeitet, eine der größten Plattformen für Journalismus in Großbritannien. Jetzt, wie gesagt, kümmert er sich um das Thema, wie bewahrt man einen kühlen Kopf, wenn die Breaking News und einem die Bilder und Videos und Kommentare im Netz nur so um die Ohren fliegen. Herzlich willkommen unserem Keynote-Speaker, Alastair.
Thank you, danke. Guten Morgen. Thank you, Richard, for the introduction. I apologize at the beginning for my lack of German. I know about 3 words. I've used one of them already, so we'll save the rest for later. My name is Alastair Reid. I'm managing editor of First Draft, which was an organization set up last June, to try and help news organizations and journalists navigate the world of online news and breaking news and social media together. The founding partners were organizations that have a lot of experience and expertise in this area. But about a month ago, we launched a partner network, including the New York Times and the Washington Post and AFP, and crucially, Twitter and Facebook, to see how and if we can collaborate together on some of the issues and the challenges that I'm going to discuss today. So, social media and breaking news. I'm sure everyone will recognize this picture from 2009 when a plane crash-landed on the Hudson River in New York. This is something which has been shown many times at many conferences over the last 7 years. But the part that I'm interested in is the headline there. New York plane crash, Twitter breaks the news again. Now, of course, we can just say Twitter breaks the news. This is the news situation that we're dealing with as journalists, as news organizations, as people who use the internet. Twitter breaks the news. And big news events always break on social media first when there's someone with a smartphone and a social media account who takes a photo, uploads it to Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. And that's often how we find out about those stories. And then we are playing catch up. And since that photo was taken, the world of social media has just exploded. Now, there are now 1.7 billion people on Facebook, which is 10 times more than 2009 when that photo was taken. There are more than 1 billion on YouTube, again, 9 times more than 2009. 500 million on Instagram, 300 million on Twitter. And this has fundamentally changed how the news works, not just for us, but for everyone. And it's changed how the news cycle works. So previously, 100 years ago, we had the daily news cycle of newspapers, where you'd have hours to react and process and then write the story and analyze and contextualize all of that. You do that every day. Then there was the breaking news cycle, where radio and TV, you probably remember, we interrupt this broadcast to bring you news of, you might be watching a favorite TV show, and the news interrupts with breaking news. But then, of course, we had the 24-hour news cycle with cable TV, starting with CNN in the 80s and the internet, when you could have a story and keep it going and process it and analyze it and add context and report, and that would continue in the loop. But then social media has added a whole new facet to this, where anyone who is connected to the internet and has a social media account can be part of that loop. It can be part of that process. And now, in 2016, the people on social media are in the billions, and they are also part of this breaking news cycle. And so we're calling this the participatory news cycle. People on social media, they participate in the act of breaking news. They are giving reports, they are giving information, they are giving photos and videos, which we then use in our reporting. But into the middle of all of this comes lies, misinformation, rumors, hoaxes, and lies which people online are sharing in these breaking news situations and muddying the waters of truth when we're trying to do the job and report the news. It happened in Paris, it happened in Brussels, happened in Turkey, happened in the Egypt air crash, happened in Nice, and it happened in Munich. And it happens, there are many, many more examples that I could give for stories over the last year, over the last 5 years, of where false information has been shared, rumors and hoaxes and lies have been shared in a breaking news situation that is then believed by people and shared by people and sometimes reported by news organizations as the truth. It's not always people with trying to deceive us, trying to lie to us. Sometimes with rumors, it's people trying to make sense of the situation, trying to understand what is happening. That's how, as human beings, we process information. If something fits with what we believe is true, and how we see the world, then we're more likely to believe it. Sometimes, of course, it's just people who are making jokes. They think that a tragic news situation is hilarious, they want to make a joke around it, or they want to get more followers, they want to get more retweets, they want to get more likes. And then there are people who are intentionally trying to derail and affect the news agenda for a political or a social agenda that they may have. After Munich, and after a lot of the rumors and false information going around there, the German Minister for the Interior said, nowadays, in the age of social networks, after the police were accidentally shared some false information about the number of shooters, it is no longer the police who have control over the quantity and timing of the release of information, but it's everyone. Now, I would slightly tweak that and update that to be nowadays, in the age of social networks, it is no longer the news organizations and the journalists who have control over the quantity and timing of information. It is everyone. Everyone on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the places we've been talking about, can have the power to share a report or a picture on the same platform as the news organizations. Why does this matter, though? I mean, we can leave those people to just say what they want, and then we will report the truth, right? Why does it matter if people are sharing false information? We don't. Well, these days, according to the Digital News Report 2016, more than half, just over half, of the people, thousands and thousands of people that they spoke to, use social media as a source of news every week. Around 1 in 10 actually say that that's their main source, and that's higher, obviously, for younger people, and that number is just going to grow. And people are discussing these stories, discussing these events, and the breaking news within themselves and getting information that they then use to understand the world, whether it's true or not. This was a study done by BuzzFeed, Craig Silverman, who is the editor of BuzzFeed Canada. He is also part of First Draft, but he did this study recently looking at different news pages and political pages in the US and found that mainstream pages, Facebook pages, news organizations, told the truth nearly all the time. But other partisan, other news pages on Facebook were regularly sharing false information. And this is just for the few that they looked at. I'm sure as social media users, as Facebook users, I mean, how often do you see people sharing false information? Put your hand up if you have ever seen someone share a fake story on Facebook. Yeah, nearly everyone. In the last week? Yeah. Happens all the time. And this is how people end up understanding the world. And the problem is, beyond this, people don't actually recognize the difference between a trusted legacy news organization with editorial standards and just a social publisher. Again, this was from the Digital News Report. And in Germany, it's pretty good. You recognize news brands. In many countries, it is lower, where people don't actually know the difference or don't see the difference between a news organization and just a Facebook page sharing ideas. And this happened, I saw this last week in a group that I'm in called British Politics, which is, don't join it, it is horrible. But this was a video shared of Uber riots in Paris, and underneath they said, how is that assimilation working out for you? It was a comment on the refugee and the migrant crisis, and saying, how is it working with you bringing in people from these other countries with a video of a riot? It was from the Uber riots, and people said that in the comments, but one of the replies was, how do people know that it's Uber riots? One side of the media is lying at the end of the day, and I don't know which. This person didn't recognize the difference between this rubbish Facebook page and a traditional news organization. And that's led to the trust people have in news and in journalists and in news organizations just plummeting. It's going down and down and down. The trust in news is in the stories. How often do you agree you can trust most of the news most of the time? This is 2015 and 2016. It's going down. And from this year, these are the countries their trust in news organizations and journalists. So, how do we rebuild trust in the news? I believe we have to, serious journalism that has real editorial standards. It needs to distance itself from these social publishers before it's too late. And not just in a breaking news situation, but all the time. So how do we do that? Verify everything, all the things, all the time. Not just in a breaking news situation, but all the time, all the hoaxes that you see online. And we do that through a number of different ways. At First Draft, we run training, and we have guides and tools and workshops and things like that. But the main questions you want to ask are similar when you're reporting any story. First one is, are you looking at the original? You don't want to publish something which belongs to someone else and have a copyright infringement. You want to know who took the photo, so you can understand who they are, where they're coming from, and you can get more information and get more context to a story. You want to know where that picture or that video or that report came from. You want to know when it was captured, and you want to know why it was captured. It's similar to the who, what, where, when, why, how of journalism that is generally taught when people begin. Those are the questions you want to answer in your report. These are the questions you want to answer when you're trying to verify a report or a picture or a piece of information. And before I said it was not just around breaking news, but all the time, excuse me, you may recognize this hoaxmap.org, which was set up last year, documenting fake and false or kind of misattributed stories around the refugee crisis around Germany. And these are all instances of fake reports and the location where they came from, and hoaxes which this person who set it up has found. It happens all the time, as I'm sure we found earlier, who's seen a fake story. So ideally, we want to be trying to address these stories all the time, not just in breaking news, to rebuild that trust that people have lost in media as a whole and separate serious journalism from those social publishers. It's not always that easy, though. So what we really want to do is to make the truth as shareable as the lie. A big part of human nature in believing this kind of thing is something called confirmation bias, which means that you are more biased, you are more likely to believe something if it confirms your view of the world. If it fits with how you understand the world to be, you are more likely to believe something and not question it, whether it's true or false. That is why a lot of hoaxes and false information get shared. It's because of confirmation bias. But we need to make, as news organizations and journalists, try and make the truth as shareable as the lie. A big part of that is to have really strong, clear visuals. These are two examples of the pictures and the information and reports that were being shared in Munich in July, here in the story, and then also in the attempted coup in Turkey that were old, that were false, that were not true. And if you use strong, clear visuals to convey that message that something is old or something is false. In another example, after Brexit, there was some people sharing stories saying in Spain, British refugees welcome. It was actually from an old sign from earlier in the year, refugees welcome. People had changed the image to say British refugees welcome. But it's important to essentially destroy the fake. It's in the same way as these ones here, you put a big stamp of text over the fake information so that if people share that again, the debunk, the truth, travels with the picture. The same here. This was by an excellent, well-respected fact-checking organization, but they shared the picture again. And people can just take that picture, take it away from the text, away from the tweet, and continue pushing the hoax. If you destroy the fake image with a big fake stamp, that will travel, that message will travel with the picture and clearly tell you what's true and what's false. Humor and creativity is important as well. I mean, that's a big reason why false information travels in the first place. Sometimes it's funny. This was a picture you may remember from around Hurricane Sandy in 2012. And this was not real. This was two pictures put together of a big supercell storm and the Statue of Liberty. And many people instead decided they can use some humor here and say, it's definitely fake, but it is awesome. Some of the time at First Draft, we do a regular news quiz, a fake news quiz every month, where I try to use my tabloid, terrible headline skills to talk about some of the issues and make it funny and make it shareable and make it interesting. If a very dry, factual, boring debunk, telling the truth in a dry, boring way, that will not travel as far and as fast as the lie. So we need to make the truth as shareable as the lie. But when it comes back to breaking news, there are some things that we can do in this situation as well to bring the audience in and rebuild the trust in the news and in journalists, which many people have lost, which is why they keep believing and sharing those social media hoaxes. The first of it is, as I said, to verify everything. In the days of social media, people don't remember who was first. That's a very internal newsroom issue. People don't care who's first. They don't notice. They don't remember who was first or fast, but they do remember who was wrong. Everyone remembers if you get something wrong. No one remembers who's first anymore. And in this a focus group with people at Eyewitness Media Hub did, they asked, would you rather a news organization or a journalist was a little bit slower, 10 minutes slower, but they got it right, or that they pushed something out without verifying it? And they said, they should wait the 20 minutes because I think that their motivations for trying to show the unverified image early is not because they want the viewers to see an accurate picture of the story. I think they show it early without verifying it because they want the scoop or they're trying to be sensational and they know it's a good picture. Wait the 10 minutes and verify it. At the end, if they're not willing to wait, it shows they're not really valuing the truth over anything else. I can't think of something more succinct in how a lot of breaking news works these days, especially from people. That could be applied to everyone, but for journalists, that line, if they're not willing to wait to verify something, then they're not really valuing the truth over anything else. And I think that's a real serious issue with trust in news at the moment. So one of the 4 points I think that we can do in a breaking news situation to rebuild that trust is, number one, is transparency. To be clear about how much is known and how much misinformation is out there. This is an excellent this happens all the time in the English language media anyway. When a news story breaks on the media, there's some points for people to remember in breaking news situations that news outlets will get things wrong. Don't trust anonymous sources. Don't trust stories that just cite another news outlet. There's almost never a second shooter. Is number 4 there. And this is for all events, as we found here in Munich in the tragic story back in July. Pay attention to the language that the media uses. Look for news outlets that are close to the incident, local news outlets. Compare with multiple sources. And big news brings out the fakers and the photoshoppers, and beware of reflexive retweeting, just hitting retweet. Some of this is on you. This is directed at the audience, but having that conversation and saying, look, we are all part of this process now. You are also part of this breaking news process. And it's on your responsibility to do that. And not saying things like this cannot be independently verified, because that doesn't mean anything to the audience. That means we didn't verify it. This cannot be independently verified. It means we didn't bother. And as the same focus group as before, how does that make them feel? I trust them because they're professionals. That's their job. I want them to do their job properly. And if you don't, then I'm not interested. A little bit more detail. It says, there we go. It screams of like zero quality control if you just put anything on the TV and they go, there you go, that might be true. It's see them as professionals and I want them to do their job. And if they're not delivering, then I'm not interested. So being transparent about what you know and how you know it, and being clear about what you know and what you don't know. This is starting to happen more and more, which is great to see, is people being clear, in the news organizations being clear in that breaking news situation about what we know and what we don't know. What I would add to that at the same time is here's what is fake. As that story is breaking, you can have here's what we know, here's what we don't know, but here is what is fake. Those rumors and those hoaxes and those lies are going around on social media and our audience are seeing them and reading them. And if we are not saying publicly this is not true, then why would they believe it? Some people will say, why is the media not reporting that? What are they covering up? What are they hiding of the false information? And it will rebuild trust in journalists and news organizations if we meet those lies head on and say, here is what's false, and here is how we know, and be clear about that. As we saw in the first one, we will make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes in a big, fast-moving, breaking news situation, but be honest about that. Be honest about that. That's what increasingly we're seeing in some places. At The Guardian, they said what we got right and wrong in coverage of the Paris attacks. And here's some examples from reportedly when they openly corrected themselves. And it's the same on social media when people are dealing with each other, with their friends and with their contacts. If it was a person-to-person relationship, and I said something to you that was wrong, I got it wrong, and then I didn't admit it, I tried to cover it up and pretend that I didn't, you would trust me less. And it's the same on social media with journalists and news organizations and their audience. It's that same relationship. So admit when you get something wrong. People will appreciate it, and they will appreciate the correction. Finally, is community. You know, social networks are about community, social media is about community, and in a breaking news situation, you are part of that community as well. So it's important to educate the audience into what happens in breaking news, how things have gotten wrong, what's true and what isn't, but respect the audience in that process as well, and tell them the truth, and admit when you get things wrong, and approach eyewitnesses with respect and with empathy that they deserve. And also invite the audience to actually get involved. They have information which you don't. They could have information and pictures and reports that you don't have that will add to that coverage and be a part of that process. When treating them with that respect that I mentioned, this is a couple of examples from recent stories where Brian Stelter at CNN was reporting on the Orlando shooting and said, can you join me for a phone interview? We still haven't found my friend. That's my current priority. And he said, understood. Thank you for replying. My thoughts are with you and your friend. We're constantly reaching out to contact eyewitnesses, but we have to treat them, it's the same as speaking to them face-to-face, in person. Just because it's on social media doesn't mean that they're any less of a person or a potential audience member or a potential source. So they are people. It may be talking to them online, but treating them with the same respect and in the same way you would in person. There's lots more about all of this on firstdraftnews.com. I'm totally happy to take questions. And if you want to find out more about this, have any questions, want to talk more, I'm totally open to that. Always want to have a conversation about these issues and about these problems, because the only way that we're going to work through it is together, is by having a conversation and working together and collaborating around the problems and around the potential solutions. So thank you very much.
Alastair, thank you very much indeed.
No
This was really such a great keynote, and you see the room is filling up, so you've done everything right. We're exploding with tweets.
Well, I'm just happy that my face is gone from the,
Is it? Come on. So let's maybe we're gonna start, Tobias, with some Slido questions. Is there anything that we would like to know from you? So, für alle diejenigen, die gerade erst dazugekommen sind, wir benutzen hier Slido, sly.do, und dort könnt ihr eure Fragen stellen, hochvoten oder runtervoten, und dann haben wir so ungefähr einen guten Schnitt von guten Fragen, was euch interessiert. First question by Ozil. Do we get your presentation afterwards?
I can do it as a PDF and tweet it out, yeah.
Okay, so either follow him on Twitter, entweder auf Twitter ihm folgen, oder aber es gibt auch eben unseren Account hier von Media Lab. Einfach dem Media Lab Bayern folgen, und dort erfahrt ihr dann auch, wo ihr diese Präsentation bekommt. Vielen Dank. The next one we'll skip. Anonymous. Are there ways with big data and AI to validate news?
With big data and AI, there are some ways. I know there are some tools being built which will see a picture and will use like neural networks to identify what is in that picture and then to see if it relates to a story. There are lots of tools out there already which we use. One of the number one tools that I recommend every time is doing a reverse image search, which will check a picture against a database of all the other pictures like Google Images to see if it has appeared somewhere before. But in terms of automating the verification process, I don't think that's a good idea, because computers make mistakes, and journalism, like robot reporting, that only goes so far. It always needs a human touch to be able to tell the difference. And I think that with big data and AI, it can take you some of the way, but not the whole way, because journalism, it needs that human touch, and there's a risk of having mistakes if we leave it up to computers.
But if I get it right, you're saying that we should get used to the fact that we will collaborate with artificial intelligences and systems like that in the future.
Yeah, I mean, that's something which is going to affect every industry, every facet of human life. And there are some things which that can be useful for, but it's only up to a certain point. They should be thought of as tools, not replacements. And tools are only as good as the person who holds them. So it's important for journalists to know all of this information and the skills as well, and use the tools effectively, but not rely on them solely.
So some of us still will have a job. That's good. I take that with me. It's very optimistic thinking. Okay. I like the one, should newsrooms practice more... Oh, no. Where was it? Should newsrooms practice more on breaking news situations, just like the police or firefighters are doing?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, you need to have a process and a workflow in place for when a big story breaks, including social media. And because now it's not just reporting on the ground, it's that those two things, reporting on the ground, on the scene, and on social media, are equally important, because there will be things on social media that you won't get on the ground, and there will be things on the ground that you won't get on social media. You need both, ideally. But because social media is such a new part of this, there aren't necessarily always those processes and those workflows in place that we are well drilled in, well practiced in, like with sending a reporter to the scene. That's something we all trained to do, when we started, but now social media has affected that differently. We've got loads on firstdraftnews.com, sorry for the shameless plug, but we write about this all the time to talk about that workflow and that process and how to set the team up in the newsroom.
Oh, great. So we're going to talk about bots. Do bots have an impact on reporting these days?
Yeah, massively. I mean,
how?
I don't know about reporting, but they do on the conversation. I mean, like Donald Trump, I think a third of the pro-Trump tweets after the last presidential debate were from bots. And there was a huge network of bots tweeting pro-Brexit. And so they have a massive impact on social media and on the conversation there, and the way that people end up understanding the world, massively.
So we're going to have the same situations now with the upcoming elections next year in Germany, and there was one party from the right-wing parties who have declared that we will also use bots. So how can you verify, falsify, how can you identify if that's actually a bot?
So bots tend to... you do a reverse image search of the picture, of the profile picture. There won't be an original picture there. There won't be someone's face. They will also retweet, share things the same many times.
The same pattern?
They won't in the same pattern. Sometimes they won't have a conversation, a natural conversation. It takes time. There's a good site called Bot or Not, where you add the Twitter account and it looks through all the tweets and its relationships and thinks, what is this a bot or not? Which is worth having a look at, but it's difficult and it can take time. There's also, it's worth digging around and finding connections between them and tracing them back. If they say they're going to use bots, then you can probably find out the company that they're going to use to set the bots up, and then find out which accounts there are. Old school journalism digging for stories, but it's both.
I like your quote that you made, like, nobody remembers who's first, but everybody who was wrong. The next one, anonymous also, with why is there like the race to be first? Is that over, or is it still important?
I think it's important in the newsroom. It's important to, so this is a breaking news situation. It's important to the people in the newsroom and their competitive nature, which drives journalism a lot of the time. It's important there to be first, or to be fast. But like I said before, people don't see that. Like the audience, everyone else, when they get their news from social media.
So you really suggest that we should get over it and just like be a little more, really?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was from the before,
exactly.
And the focus group, and the audience, they don't care. They don't know who's first. Ideally, we will be first and right, but you need to build those verification processes in, or people will just remember you as the one that gets it wrong, and first. There was a a news organisation in the UK that was joked about being, always first but rarely right. It's important to be right. You are the guardian of truth. There's a very grand way of talking about journalism, but it is what we do in the public interest.
So the people are not paying for the information because it's out there anyways, but for the validation.
Absolutely that. Because a lot of the information and the reports and the rumours on social media will be out there already. They want to know what to trust. They want to know what is true.
Okay.
And not just for news organisations to blindly reshare things without checking them out, because they see that already on Twitter, on Facebook. They want to know what to trust.
Okay. A last one maybe has 3 votes. This cannot be independently verified. Shows, please, how to react in those unclear situations.
If something can't be independently verified, if you don't know it's true, why are you publishing it? Really? That's what I think. But Rumours sometimes come true, but there are ways to check them out. I mean, it's the same thing with a story. As an editor, if a reporter came to you and said, someone just called up and they said that the King of Spain is dead, would you just publish the story from there? No, you would say, right, what other reports are there? Who told you? All the other questions. You have to verify it, and in a way that is clear to the audience. This cannot be independently verified. Why can't it? What questions did you ask? What questions couldn't you get an answer to? I think that's what, in that focus group, what people were kicking back against, is that this cannot be independently verified. It's a very short way of saying we don't know if it's true. But you have all, hopefully, people ask questions and prod the video and the picture and see what is true. So be clearer about what you know to be true and what not.
Maybe one final question, if I may, referring to Chancellor Merkel yesterday. She also talked about the issue that that we are living in a post-fact society. Do you agree? And how is it that people don't care that much about whether something is true or not? They just go by the feeling.
I think that social media has had an enormous impact on how people receive information, but also how they process that and why they share it. I mean, people share things online not because it's true or not, but because of how it makes them feel. And often they don't do those checks themselves. They share something because it fits with how they understand the world to be or how they want the world to be.
Is there a remedy?
I think it's journalists and news organisations stepping in and and taking control back of that conversation and of that process of information, of trusted information, and being very clear about what is true and what isn't and how we know that, and not chasing the clicks and the traffic and the kind of the viral content which goes around on social media. You can still ride that wave of interest in a fake story if you make the truth about it as interesting and shareable and visually impactful as the lie. There's still a way to rise that wave of interest, but with the truth. I think social media has massively changed how we process information, but news organizations and journalists are the organizations to be able to fix that.
So we all can do better. Thank you so much for your inspirational keynote and for answering questions. If you have further questions with him, you're going to hang around a little bit more, so grab him for coffee and follow him on Twitter. Thank you so much, Alastair Reid.